Coming up on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, we continue our look at the quarterback competition through different layers and different images, and we look at the wide receiver position and how it might affect the competition move forward. Plus, we talk with Tom Vanderford. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis. Thank you very much for spending your Friday with me, and thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So do us a favor, go to YouTube and hit subscribe. Upvote the video, and of course, hit the bell so you'll be notified whenever we release a new video. We try to release every morning at 7 a.m. We have extra videos that'll come out whenever things happen. Really, in regards to football is what we're going to concentrate on, and post-game pod as well. Tonight, by the way, Ole Miss Oral Roberts Game 1, there will not be a post-game pod because I'm doing honeydews. This is my wife's birthday weekend, and I have some prior obligations. So tonight, we're going to have to deal with that. So I'm sorry about that, but we'll have Game 2, Game 3 as usual. Just so you guys know, we're going to Magic Kingdom, and we're eating at the Liberty Tree Tavern as her birthday meal. She wanted to do that. So if you're at Magic Kingdom and you're at the Liberty Tree Tavern, give me a look up. I'll gladly say hi. So all this week, we've been talking about the Ole Miss position groups through the lens of the quarterback competition. As we have talked about, the quarterback competition will be the story for the next 6 months. Some others may try to push different narratives. Some others may do whatever, but the only important thing that is going on that you're going to care about is that quarterback competition. I don't care if Zach Evans running the ball, the wide receiver position, and the way they're trying to refill what's going on, the defensive line being remade so versatility becomes key. All of those are going to play secondary roles to the quarterback competition. They just are. It doesn't minimize what they're going through. I just don't think people are willing to admit how important this quarterback competition is. And I don't think we're going to find out until they go on the field against Troy who the quarterback is. I just don't think Lane Kiffin's going to give that up. I don't think there are sources in the athletic department that would give an accurate representation of what's going on. I don't think they trust each other at all at this point. And because of that, there's going to be a separation. You're going to be in the dark. So just enjoy this. Listen to what they say in the press conferences. We're going to bring press conference highlights during spring practice. So every time somebody speaks to the media, you will hear about it. But them doing that and them releasing inside information and just handing stories to the journalists, that doesn't happen anymore. Not in the football program, at least, because they just don't trust each other. Lane Kiffin got really burned, I think, by the rivals and scout guys whenever he was out at Southern California. And because of that, he relies primarily on national guys that doesn't care at all about his program. He's worried about basically a fan site and agendas. And because of those agendas, they realize that basically you have 3 or 4 years, and if things aren't going well, they're going to turn on you instantly so they can start building up their subscription base, because anger sells subscriptions, and Lane Kiffin is smart enough to know this. And because of that, he doesn't trust what's going on. So whenever a situation like this develops, they're not going to know what's happening. So don't expect the quarterback question to be resolved until September, until Labor Day. Until Ole Miss goes on the field against Troy, the quarterback situation probably will not be settled because, honestly, he doesn't want that information out there. These are 2 different quarterbacks. And looking at that, the wide receiver room is so interesting. Last year, they kind of got bit by the small bug. And the way they played and the way they didn't substitute kind of wore on these wide receivers a little bit. Jonathan Mingo has the ability to best hold up to it, but he broke a foot, so that's not really a muscle injury. But players like Braylon Sanders, Dontario Drummond even, strained his hamstring, and there's muscle injuries. And because of that, I don't think people realize that the strength and conditioning coach takes the fall for muscle injuries. And Wilson Love going to Oregon, it may have set up to where Wilson Love can go find his right thing. I guarantee you, between the spring game and the Auburn game, that dug a pretty big hole in what he was doing. I have no inside information on that, but I do know that muscle injuries are the responsibility of the strength and conditioning coach and the way they stretch and the way they do things. And him disappearing shortly after that happens tells me there was more to this story than you know. Remember, local media don't have any sources. They don't know what's going on. They've been completely frozen out. They're not being handed information anymore. They're getting stuff from third-hand information from a disgruntled parent of a player who's not going to have any inside information because the telephone game, they're far out. So whenever coaches leave, whenever his hand-picked guys leave, don't necessarily think that it's for no reason or they just wanted a new job. There could be some problems. And I don't think there are necessarily any problems with the Lane Kiffin staff. I think it's problems on the end that they're trying to get rid of, and they're trying to cut them off the seam. So just don't eliminate that possibility. We don't know the answer because there are no sources. Now, because the wide receiver room was so small, they were susceptible to muscle injuries last year. And you saw 5'7" wide receivers. The Ole Miss wide receiving core was increasingly small, just tiny. And Jeff Lebby didn't substitute that much. He just didn't. For whatever belief that they have, they just didn't substitute that much. And it was probably so that they could run tempo. So you essentially sacrifice depth for tempo under Jeff Lebby. Now this year I think that Ole Miss is going to find a way to rotate wide receivers a little bit better. And I think that you're going to see 6 of them. It might be a situation where they come in a series and they're the guys for that series. But you give a rest to certain receivers. Now, one thing that Ole Miss has got to do, and this is the thing that kind of gives me credit, because Luke Altmyer struggled in the middle of the field against Baylor. Of course, most quarterbacks would. This is a true freshman. And Jaxson Dart had a gunslinger mentality and actually threw the ball fairly well at USC in the air raid system. So knowing that, and knowing that Ole Miss is getting bigger wide receivers. Whenever they bring people in, there's bigger wide receivers transferring in. Braylon Brown has a chance to take a major step. Jonathan Mingo, they're going to be bigger on the outside. They're going to be bigger in the slot with Jalen Knox. They're also going to have the little guy in J.J. Henry. I do expect him to make a play. But with the strength of this team essentially being between the hashes, I think it's an advantage Jaxson Dart. Honestly do. Now, like I told you yesterday, the offensive line sputters and you need a little bit of that mobility. You saw that what Luke Altmyer can do in him running around. He's a tough guy. Got sacked an ungodly amount of time against Baylor. But I think Jaxson Dart will have the advantage just because he has the confidence to make the throws and he has the arm strength to make the throws. I just think Jaxson Dart is going to win this job. But in a situation where Luke Altmyer wins the job, you have bigger wide receivers on the outside. Braylon Brown wins the job. Jonathan Mingo ends up being the go-to guy on the outside. The outside receivers do well. And Luke Altmyer is a football junkie coming into it, and he uses the outside wide receivers very well. You saw that in the third quarter against Baylor. And because of that, you just don't want to, count him out. Because I really saw some of it. Somebody that didn't have any reps. No, the offense and the game plan put in was completely for Matt Corral. And Luke Altmyer was thrust in there. Whenever he struggled early to get to halftime, you figure out what to do that fits him. They put in like a 5-6 play game plan at halftime. And in the third quarter, that kid goes to work. This cannot be discounted. This absolutely cannot be discounted. And like I said, I think Jaxson Dart's going to win, but something about Luke Altmyer and the it factor makes me think this competition is going to go on longer than many people think. This is the time of year when I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. This year I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right, thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. All bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, puffs included. That's 100% real chocolate. They're low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. They're all delicious and new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It'll be delicious and it will be good for you. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it taste great first, then they figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how they do it, but they pull it off every single time. So this is what you do. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Make sure to check out Locked On Bracket Breakdown March 14th right here on the Ole Miss podcast feed and YouTube channel. College basketball experts Chris Gordy, Andy Patton, and betting expert Lee Sterling give you in-depth breakdowns on every matchup. So you can check it out right here where you see your podcast. It should be pretty good. Also, do us a favor and subscribe on YouTube. Hit the bell for notifications of upcoming videos and, of course, upvote the video itself. Once we hit 1,000 videos before football, that will trigger post-game live for Ole Miss football games, and we'll do a live post-game show with chat and allow you to participate as well. So if you know friends that want to follow Ole Miss football, get them to subscribe to the channel. The faster we hit that number, the better. So in the first segment, we talked about the wide receiver positions and honestly the distrust between the coaching staff and the media based off of Lane Kiffin's past history and why it's relevant that they were so small last year and they were injured last year. I expect them to get a little bigger. I expect them to sign Malik Heath to go alongside Jonathan Mingo. That will help in the run game. Now remember, they're going to make a lot of these decisions based off of Zach Evans. Zach Evans is the best player we have. It's going to be used to make him a little better. So they're going to find big bodies and put them on the outside that are willing blockers, and they can just turn them loose. And because of that, the play action is going to really open up for the Michael Trigg and Jalen Knox situation. But the outside receivers have a role as well. I do expect Braylon Brown to have a big-time year this year. He was a kid that if 2020 was a normal year and he could have gone through the camp circuit, would have had a chance at being a 5-star. He's that toolsy of a wide receiver. But them shutting down camps and shutting down everything, you just kind of had to go off what you already had. No new data points got thrown in there. He ended up 160, 170, somewhere in there. But down at Chaminade Madonna, where Braylon Brown went to school, the first thing that happens is during the wintertime, they run there and they put up a slow 40 time. Why do they put up a slow 40 time? They're running on soggy ground most of the time. They're not doing it on a track. They're not doing everything. They're doing it on a football field, and it's generally soggy ground. And that's probably good for 1/10 of a second, 1/10 and a half of a second going in that. And because of that, Florida wide receivers aren't really going to jump from the first time before the camp to right after the camp. They're not necessarily going to show because the numbers aren't going to pop off. But eventually he would have gotten to Atlanta or somewhere else that was running on a little bit more solid footing. He would have put up big numbers and he would have shot up the rankings. He was selected for the Under Armour game. I think he was going to show out there. This is a really smooth player that has a chance to be really good at what he does. Jonathan Mingo, like I said in an earlier video, this needs to be his year. It's 6'2", 215 pounds. He fits the prototype of what this offense is going to be. Malik Heath on the other side, Braylon Brown. Those are going to be the three main ones. You got Brandon Buckhalter. You've on the inside, you've got Jalen Knox and J.J. Henry and Jalen Watkins from Louisville at the slot position. J.J. Henry may slide back to third because Watkins was a top 10 ACC wide receiver last year from Louisville. Just he played at Louisville. They didn't do they didn't really do things. Like they had Malik Cunningham, and he put up crazy athletic numbers because he's a great runner. And because of that, wide receivers tended to be overshadowed. So that is going on with the wide receiver room. Now, I break them down to tell you. Luke Altmyer, in his first year, struggled throwing the ball across the middle of the field. So that tells you the outside wide receivers are the important part of his development. That'd be the Malik Heaths, the Braylon Browns, the Brandon Buckhalters, the Dennis Jacksons. Those guys are going to be key if Luke Altmyer wants to compete for the job, because he needs his go-to guy while he develops the middle of the field. Because we saw against Baylor, the middle of the field, he was foolable. He was a typical true freshman. I'm not saying anything wrong with him, but he was foolable. And understanding that will let you know that he is going to probably try to work outside the hashes. Now, Jaxson Dart has immense confidence and is willing to try to Brett Favre it, for lack of a better word. He trusts his arm implicitly. It's like I said, he's Matt Corral with 2 or 3 more inches and 15 to 20 more pounds. That's what Jaxson Dart is. But he's not Matt Corral as a senior. He's Matt Corral in 2019. That's what people need to realize with Jaxson Dart. I do expect Jaxson Dart to win this job, but nothing will be handed to him. It's important to know that. Nothing will be handed to him. He's going to have to work. I think he's going to win the job in the end, but it's going to be an interesting battle between Jaxson Dart, who is supremely confident, a gunslinger. He does the Anakin Skywalker face paint, the whole 9 yards, and Luke Altmyer, kind of the kid from Starkville that can almost, I mean, we were a missed field goal in that Sugar Bowl, honestly, away from winning that game. Honestly, the defense just played phenomenally. But the fact that we struggled kicking the ball, which is part of our transfer portal strategy, I think, for this year, it put us in a bind. You can make them both. They're up 13-7 in the fourth quarter with a true freshman quarterback. And the touchdown that Baylor had was a fluke play. The ball just kind of bounced up, and the guy took it 95 yards. I'm telling you. That kid impressed me in that game. He just did. Now, some people are going to look at it and say, well, we didn't win the game. He obviously isn't good enough. No, it doesn't work like that. Absolutely doesn't work that way. That's a lazy take. This is a kid that had next to no reps with an offense game plan for Matt Corral. Comes into the game and performs. The offensive line just gets battered. He's under pressure and takes a beating the whole game. And he keeps getting up. And eventually the kid makes plays. The size and the heart of that kid, that's one of the reasons this quarterback competition is going to be so phenomenal. And on the other side, you have Jaxson Dart, who battled through injuries at USC last year. Set the record for the most passing yards in a first start against Washington State. I think he nearly hit 400. True gunslinger. This is going to be phenomenal. This is going to be the story of not just spring practice, the summer up to the first game. I can't wait. It's going to be a ton of fun. And, man, it's going to be pretty good. Also, I do want to say Wednesday night, Peyton Chatagnier stole second, stole third, and stole home in a game. And the ball was not overthrown. It was caught and received at every location except for home plate. It was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. Ole Miss ended up winning that game 16-1. They got out of it 10-1. They changed the rotation for tonight. John Gaddis is supposed to go actually this afternoon at 1 o'clock. And then Derek Diamond Saturday and Jack Doherty Sunday. So we'll end up being able to see what they can do. Like I said, there will be no post-game pod tonight because I'll be at the Liberty Tree Tavern as the game is over, fighting Magic Kingdom crowd, getting ready to, what's the word? getting ready to take my wife to a birthday dinner, which will be pretty awesome. She requested the Liberty Tree Tavern, so we are going to do the Liberty Tree Tavern. So I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. We have Tom Vanderford coming up next, which will be very awesome, but, stick around for that. It's that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. From the latest odds, contest, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting, down to your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So do us a favor and hit subscribe. Go ahead and hit the bell for notifications of new videos and, of course, upvote the video itself. Thank you very much. I'm here with Tom Vanderford for his weekly segment about his perspective about Ole Miss sports. How you doing, Tom?
Doing great.
Well, this is kind of a fun week. Peyton Chatinier stole second, third, and home on one play. And it wasn't like a literal thing with errors all over the place. It was bizarre. We're getting ready for spring football, and Oral Roberts is coming to town with a rotation change. Any other news? Oh, yeah, basketball is mercifully over.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about baseball. We have Oral Roberts coming to town. They changed the rotation. John Gaddis is going to start today at 1 o'clock. Saturday's starter will be Derek Diamond. Sundays will be Jack Doherty. What do you think about that?
I think he's just still filling things out. He wants to see what he has. He wants to see everybody in action. And he's just massaging the lineup. I have no problem with it. I think it's a great thing. I think like we talked earlier before the season started, I think if we've got the pitching depth, we can go a long way. Now, Kevin Graham getting hurt that wasn't a good thing. But
although better now than April 15th.
Exactly. And we've got to have that depth. Got to have those middle relief guys. Got to have the closers. Got to have the good starters. So he's just playing around and seeing what he's got. I'm perfectly fine with it.
Looking at left field, who fills in with Graham going down?
Oh God, I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, who do you think?
Well, we've seen Kemp Alderman, and we've seen
he's good.
Hayden Leatherwood. Those are the two people that have filled in the two games since his injury. I think it might be a platoon situation, the way they did right field last year, and they'll just put T.J. McCants out in right field, and then left field will become the rotation thing with Hayden Leatherwood.
Will become the rotation, with Alderman and I like Alderman. I like Leatherwood. I don't know, to be honest with you, which one's got the better glove. But I like both of them. I mean, it can't hurt. The more reps you get, the better off you're going to be come tourney time and regional, hopefully super regional and World Series time.
Yeah, and if you look at the platoon that they do, the right and left, most of the pitchers are going to be right-handed. That's just the way it is.
Exactly.
So it's going to be mostly Hayden Leatherwood out there. Is my guess.
Yeah, he's got a really good bat too, so that's good.
Yeah, he hits the ball really well. He's probably the pound-for-pound best long ball hitter we have, even with Elko and everybody on the field. It's just Leatherwood just seems to have that ability. Now, let's switch gears a little bit to spring football because we all care about spring football, and we've been going through all week talking about each position group and how they will affect the quarterback competition. because I've been saying all along, there's one storyline from now until Labor Day, and that is the quarterback competition. How do you think this spring is going to play out?
I'm excited. I think it's going to be interesting. I like I said, I think Jaxson Dart coming in and having Luke Altmyer, we've got a chance for both of them to grow and progress, and the best man win. You're talking about the receivers earlier. I'm interested to see the new guys. I think that's one thing that everybody will be equal on all the new receivers. You don't. Luke doesn't have any reps with them yet, and Dart, of course, had reps with Trigg, but other than that, he didn't. I'm sure that Altmyer and Knox have tossed the football around a little bit, so I'm interested in that. I'm interested in seeing our depth at running back. I think, like you said, we probably got the best running back prospect we've ever had. But I want to see the depth behind him. This is the SEC. If he gets dinged up, I want to see Judkins and Bullock and I just want to see how they operate.
And I just love that triangle of you take the running back in the backfield and the tight end and the slot receiver. You take Jalen Knox, Michael Trigg, or Casey Kelly, because they're going to have the advantage. Because I think Hudson Wolf is going to miss the spring because I think he had a second surgery. I'm not sure about that. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I won't.
But that triangle is going to be the key to this offense and to get ready to expand out. If that triangle can be effective, because I said this offense tortures linebackers, and it mainly comes from those three guys, it's going to open stuff up on the outside because the safety has to come through and counter everything that is going on here. And all of a sudden, Braylon Brown, Jonathan Mingo, all of those guys are really just having a deep ball parade.
Exactly. So, and I'm excited also about the offensive line. I want to see how they work in the spring. I want to see our depth. I think we'll have the best depth we've had in the offensive line in quite some time. That's important when you're running as many plays a game as you can. It was interesting to see the NCAA didn't do anything on the fake injury rule. I thought that was interesting. Lane tried to bait them a little bit and get them to do something, but they didn't. So, and I get into that defense. I want to see how the defensive line goes. I want to see how the new linebackers. I want to see some of the old guys that have been backups for a long time. Like a Shawnee Sistrunk and some of those other people that were backups. I saw Austin Keys last year just totally obliterate a pulling guard for Alabama. So, and Brandon Mack was hurt last year. I want to see some of those guys and see how they progressed and see how they can help our football team.
Yeah, and this is also an interesting year because there's certain preconceived notions about a football program. Like whenever you have fifth-year seniors, your team is going to be better than sophomores and stuff like that. Well, this Ole Miss team is a lot of first-year players and new guys lining up at all levels. If Ole Miss is successful, that kind of breaks the paradigm completely of what we expect from college football.
Well, it does. It does. We lost a lot of people with significant playing time, 14 folks. So, and we're replacing them with people on paper that some of them are better and some of them are just as good. So, the like you said, the main thing in the spring also is how that offense and defense gels as a unit. How quick does the defense catch on the playbook? That's why I think it was so important to get a guy like Asheem Young. He's been in the system. He can be the so-called quarterback of the secondary.
Yeah, he's going to miss spring, by the way.
Yeah. but he can still do the X's and O's, hopefully. But we've just got a lot to see. A lot of progression, and even though he's not going to be able to play in the spring, I hope he can kind of like be a cheerleader / coach and help those guys in the secondary and with their looks and their reads and everything.
That's reps that young guys were not going to get that they're now going to get. So that's going to be helpful. And also, the most important thing in pre-spring workouts, in spring practice, in summer workouts is development of leadership. Matt Corral being the undisputed leader of this team, that's gone, and that is the most important step that this team is going to have to take, is replacing that leadership.
Yeah, somebody's got to step up. Somebody's got to step up, and like you said, we're young. Whoever wins the quarterback competition, they're young. They're not. They were both freshmen last year, right? So last season, so they're bad young. Our running back, I think he's just a sophomore, right, or maybe a junior now.
Yeah, he's a junior.
So we're not overloaded with fifth-year guys like we were last year, or sixth-year guys. We've got a few. Hey, I'm kind of looking forward to see after. He seems like he's been there forever. I'm kind of excited to see if Isaiah Woolard contributes at all this year. He's back for another year at running back.
Yeah, you look at all the guys that ended up processing out, and there's a 2-star guy out of Hattiesburg that they don't want to leave. He contributes in a role on special teams and is essential to this team. And that is really cool. He is the offensive version of what Tyler Knight was, and good luck for him down in Hattiesburg. Southern Miss did a brilliant job this offseason.
Oh, yeah.
They just went and picked out second-teamers at Ole Miss and Mississippi State, and they got like 15 or 16 of them. And
they got a kid from Arkansas. They get one here, get one there. And Will Hall, it's a brilliant strategy. Strategy.
It's one of those things where I think Southern Miss they're going to go from where they were last year, where they were playing the last 3 games without a quarterback, to next year being actually dangerous in the Sun Belt. And I do think they're going to be in the Sun Belt. I don't think the courts are going to make him in Conference USA.
I think,
I think they're going to be in the Sun Belt. But their baseball team, by the way, pretty good, as usual, Southern Miss.
Yeah.
I mean, Mississippi baseball, it's nothing to sneeze at.
No, it's not. And Southern Miss is good. I watched that state Southern Miss game, and that was a whooping. Is what that was.
Yeah, Southern Miss was up for that game. They were absolutely up for that game.
That's why we should never, ever, ever play Southern Miss in football.
I disagree totally.
Oh, dude, I see that we have nothing to gain and everything to lose if they beat us.
So, well, that's the case whenever we play any Sun Belt team. When we play Louisiana Monroe, Monroe has everything to gain.
Yeah.
You just have to treat those teams like Memphis and Southern Miss like everybody else, and not have this internal fear of everything going wrong, because everybody remembers back in the days of the Nasty Bunch when we last played Southern Miss in football, and Reggie Collier was running around and Sammy Winder and those guys, and that was almost the heyday of Southern Miss football. Now Ole Miss's athletic budget's like $110 million, and Southern's is like $20 million. There's no excuse to losing to this team.
Exactly, and one thing I've noticed with Lane Kiffin, he has his teams ready to play those teams that used to sneak up on us in the past. He does it. He's got that pro mindset mentality that he always talks about, and you never really see us just completely blow a game anymore. I mean, you could go back to in history to beating Alabama and then losing to Memphis, just stuff like that, and he seems to have control over it.
Well, what he does is the offensive system that Ole Miss runs, it accentuates our athletes on the outside. So there's not as much room for a letdown because it lets good players be good. So they're going to have an advantage over lesser players. And that's just the system that we run. Now, if everybody ran the I formation and what was going on, Southern would have a chance. But in this modern spread offensive time, Ole Miss is going to score points, and it just doesn't matter what Southern does. It honestly, it would look a lot like that Alabama game last year that they played.
Yeah,
the Southern game.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
But it is what it is, and they are going to be up. And whenever Southern plays Ole Miss, they will be absolutely sky high. And this will be our own fault because we haven't played them in 40 years. So they would be even more excited. If this was a reoccurring thing, playing twice every decade, this would die off, and it would be just like whenever we play Troy or Louisiana Monroe or in all those other. But all of this extra emphasis on this game is going to build it up the first time that Ole Miss and Southern plays. And yes, they will eventually play.
Oh yeah. They will. Even if it's for budgetary reasons, it's a close game. You know, we could get them to do 2 at our place. You know, I wouldn't want to go down there. They can only hold like 30,000 people, but who knows? You may do a 2-for-1, something like that.
Wouldn't be the first time we went down there. I think we opened that stadium.
We went down there. We went. We went. I think I remember us going to UNLV one year. So when Pete Boone was AD, we did some weird things. So.
Road game at Arkansas State. At Arkansas State.
Yeah,
he sent Eli to Arkansas State.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. To next week, we will get closer into spring practice because we'll have 1 week left. Now make your second listen Locked On Ole Miss, our Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Tom, thank you very much for stopping by. We'll do it again next week. We're getting close to spring practice. I'm just ready for that to happen.
Yep. Take care. Hotty toddy, brother.
Hotty toddy, man.